Cocoa Beach is your ultimate Florida beach vacation. Pack your bags and open your mind. Adventure is calling from Orlando's closest beach. Cocoa Beach is Florida's secret gem that's got it all. It's the budget-friendly, retro-cool destination that families and surfers adore. Come soak up the sun and ride the East Coast's most famous waves. Start planning your one-of-a-kind getaway now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. We're back with episode number 98 of History for Weirdos.
Woohoo, we're back, weirdos. Let's go.
Those numbers are getting up there in terms of our episodes.
Almost at 100.
Almost at 100. Yay!
Isn't that absolutely insane? It feels like it was a lifetime ago, and also like yesterday we just started this podcast.
Yes, I agree. We've told this before on the show, but in case you haven't heard, we recorded our first episode in my parents' bedroom.
Yes.
So it's crazy to think that that's where this all started.
Yeah, in your parents' bedroom.
Yeah.
Not creepy at all.
Not creepy at all. We were watching my younger siblings, and that just was the most like sound soft room. Had the best acoustics.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. But speaking of our 100th episode, weirdos, we want to hear from you for our very special 100th episode. So please email us at historyforweirdos@gmail.com. You can email us one of two things, or you can email us both of these things. We would love to hear your questions for us. Ask us anything. So you can email questions that you might have for Andrew, for me, for both of us. And then secondly, we would love to hear if you have any short but compelling weird history stories you want us to read. We could read your email verbatim on the show. So all you have to do is email us and put in the subject line 100th episode.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself.
If that was confusing at all, I'm so sorry. We'll definitely put this in the show notes as well.
We'll put it in the show notes, but no, that was not confusing.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Absolutely. I thought you did wonderfully.
Thank you. And for episode 98, it's your turn. So tell us, what story do you have for us this week?
Yes, I have quite the tale. So we're going to start off in 326 BC.
Okay, so not that long ago.
Yeah, not that long ago, just the other day. So Alexander the Great, no big deal.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He led his troops to the Hiphasis, now Beas River in present-day northern India.
Okay.
This was the easternmost extent of his would-be empire.
Yeah, that's really far for him.
It's very far. In present-day India as well, so past Pakistan.
Okay.
They finally get to this river, and his men basically... It's called a mutiny, but it's not really a mutiny. Oh. They basically kind of tell him, look, we're done. We're done.
They communicated their boundaries.
They did. They're like, bro, we're in India. Like, this is like, they're literally like coming to places where they thought it was like fiction. Like, we're like, according to their legends, that's where like Hercules went, or Heracles as they known him by.
And for context, Alexander and his men had been on these campaigns for how long?
It's at this point, it's about 10 years.
Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah.
I'd want to go home too.
Exactly. I don't blame them. Like, that's so much.
That's a really long time. That's a decade. Imagine they've had kids grow up in that time, probably back home.
Exactly.
And that's very poor work-life balance.
It's very poor work-life balance. That's a really good way of putting it.
Alexander the Great was not great at work-life balance.
No, he was not. He's great at warfare and conquering, but work-life balance, absolutely not. Oh my God. Well, anyways, so they turn around. But what was the biggest reason for them kind of throwing this mutiny is because they heard of this semi-mythical kingdom, at least from their point of view, that was far to the east and way across the river, and that was their boundary line. And so they heard that this kingdom could field like 250,000 men
Wow.
in battle. Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's just according to them. And, just to put that in perspective, that's 5 times as many men that Alexander used to conquer Persia.
Oh, wow. So
it's
that'd be very intimidating.
Exactly. The thought of facing, because they had just fought a really tough battle against an Indian army, and it did not go well. Like, they won, but at very high cost.
Yeah.
And so the thought of facing yet again another Indian army that was just enormous was like too much for them.
Understandable.
Exactly. So this great power, it was known as the Nanda dynasty or the Nanda Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And they ruled over like a pretty decent sized swath of northern India, centered around the kingdom of Magadha.
Okay.
Or Magadha.
Okay.
I think is a better pronunciation. Ironically enough, this empire would soon be conquered by an upstart general of humble origins, at least according to legend.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but like historical sources in the East, especially like around this, are just really spotty at best.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of legend intertwined with the history.
Exactly. And we saw it with the Achaemenid Persian Empire, is like a lot of their western portions were really well documented, from like Egypt all the way up to Greece and along like the eastern Mediterranean coast. But the further you kind of go east, it's just like the spottier and spottier and spottier the records are just become.
Okay.
And so then that's kind of the case here. So we have to kind of weave together a narrative.
Okay.
But this upstart general that I had just mentioned, his name was Chandragupta Maurya, and he would go on and found what would be known as the Mauryan Empire.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, because it's massive. It included, like, at its absolute height, almost all of India, present-day India.
Which is huge.
Which is huge. It did cover all of Pakistan and parts into, like, Afghanistan and even Iran.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was really big. It was very prosperous.
Yes, I bet.
And powerful. So, in fact, this would, and of course, I think in all of, like, ancient India, it would be kind of like the golden child.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would become like a beacon of economic prosperity, reforms, like infrastructure expansions, as well as religious tolerance.
Nice. That's always good.
So it's a good time, and especially its most glorious days would be under that of Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka.
Ashoka?
Yes. And I literally put in my next note, no relation to the Star Wars character, my fellow beautiful nerds.
Yes, you knew that's where I was going.
Yes, it's not Ahsoka Tano.
Ashoka.
Ashoka,
Okay, got
yes.
it. I wonder if that's at all where they got the name for Ahsoka.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I know, right? So Ashoka would become known as the world's first Buddhist ruler and would essentially become like a philosopher emperor well over 400 years before Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor.
Right, who's known as the philosopher emperor.
Exactly.
But this guy's the OG.
He's an OG. So he would be known as spreading Dhamma, and that's spelled Dhamma, or righteous conduct, the major theme of his rule.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. However, before we get to him, we're going to have to lay, quite a bit of groundwork of how Ashoka got to that place.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with his parents and grandparents, specifically Chandragupta. So, and not only that, but this is actually a pretty interesting time in Indian history, especially because the Mauryans would be fairly instrumental in the spreading of, or not only becoming prosperous themselves, but then because of their success, they inadvertently spread Hellenization and then laid the groundwork later on for the spread of Christianity, ironically enough.
What?
Yeah, it has far-flung consequences.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And I'll get to I'll make sure to mention it and to point it out, but there's a specific event that will essentially lay the groundwork for Hellenization and eventually Christianity.
Okay.
As a consequence. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. So Chandragupta's early life, though, it's relatively unknown.
Of course.
Because of course, we just can't. You just can't have a good time with ancient history.
You just can't.
Yeah.
They're not recording how kids are as they're growing up or what they're like as teenagers. So We just don't know.
You know what really bugs me about a lot of like ancient Sumerian tablets?
What?
They're just like accounting records.
Oh, really?
It's just really boring stuff. It's like a list of like, this is my property.
This is this guy's property.
Yeah, and that's it.
Oh.
It's
That's
like
lame.
Yeah, it kind of gives you like a hint into their like socioeconomic status, but nothing about their culture or anything.
Right.
That's
And
about it.
you can't read them. That must also bother you.
I cannot read Sumerian, no. I have to rely on scholars to do that for me.
That's so embarrassing. I don't even know what to say to that.
Well, anyways, you know what? I'm going back to this narrative, to Chandragupta here. So, in fact, the earliest sources that we have on his life, and that mention him by name specifically, comes from the Roman historian Justin from around the 2nd century AD.
Okay.
And different than Emperor Justin, who'd come centuries later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justinian.
There was an Emperor Justin as well.
There's someone just named Justin?
So, like, technically, this Justin, he had a long-ass, like, Latin name. Like, he had, like, you know, his 4 names. And
right.
It was probably, like, Justinianus or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? But we just call him Justin.
Okay. I didn't realize how old that name was.
Justin, yeah. It's...
I can't not think of Justin Timberlake. It just sounds like such a boy band name.
Justin Timberlake.
Those are
Roman, like, author and historian.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay. So this Roman historian is the first record.
Yeah, from the 2nd century. So centuries after Chandragupta.
Right.
So, and I have mentioned this on previous episodes, but I absolutely love like origin stories of, founders of cities, conquerors, dynasty creators, et cetera, because they are almost like always shrouded in myth, and they always follow some sort of like hero archetype.
Yeah.
Like, especially like a rags to riches, like hero, ascension, I guess, for lack of a better word.
'Cause who wouldn't want to believe in that story? Right?
Exactly.
An everyday person would love to hear that their empire, their glorious, nation, whatever it is, was founded by someone who's just like them.
Right. And they found out later, you know what? My like great grandfather was the king of this place, and I had no idea.
Oh yeah, or my great grandmother was a goddess, and I had no idea. Crazy, right?
Like Romulus and Remus.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, anyways, Chandragupta, he's no different. He's no different. Again, coming from presumably humble origins, according to the work of Justin in his Epitome Historiarum Trogae Pompi. I tried to do my best Latin there, and I think I butchered it. I always butcher the foreign languages on this podcast.
Okay, well,
I try my best, guys.
We won't be correcting you on the Latin.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
That's fair. So, according to Justin's work here, there were a lot of miracles that were associated with his ascension to power.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. One of my favorites is that apparently a wild elephant submitted to him as a mount before a very important battle.
That would be so cute.
Like that's what you glean from it.
So they're getting ready for battle, and this like elephant comes up and just kind of like bows, like you can ride me.
You can ride me into battle to victory.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd be so jealous. That'd be amazing.
Another ancient Roman writer suggested that Chandragupta had actually met with Alexander the Great during his invasion of India.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Again, yeah, but this doesn't seem likely, and it's probably anachronism, but still.
So that's how it connects to what you were telling us at the beginning. This
Exactly.
is around they could have overlapped, but likely didn't.
But Chandragupta, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to get to it when I get to it, but he does come back with Hellenization is still like in the future.
Oh, you're right.
As well.
Yeah.
There's an event that's going to happen. And so, regardless though, Chandragupta's early life, again, shrouded in mystery, and even a lot of what he accomplished isn't exactly known. So, in fact, there are no contemporary sources of any of Chandragupta's conquests and even achievements during his reign.
What?
Yeah, and this is frustratingly common, again, during this time, as surviving writings are much more scarce coming from the East than the West, which is very, very annoying.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, this episode was originally slated to be about Chandragupta before I realized, one, how hard that would be to make a full-length episode about him, and two, honestly, the more I read about Ashoka, I was like, oh, I like this guy more. He's more interesting, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to learn about him, but also how frustrating as a big history nerd for you.
It is.
To not have access to more information.
Oh my God. It frustrates me to no end.
I bet.
I hope that like in the afterlife, I can just obtain all the knowledge like possible.
Yeah. That's a cool idea. That like if that's what happens when we pass, that we just kind of get all of these answers, that'd be sweet.
That would be, oh my God. No words. Honestly, 0 words.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But anyways, I am digressing a lot this episode.
That's all right.
So I'm going to turn briefly to the West now, away from India for a moment. So after Alexander's abandonment of his Indian campaign, he would infamously head back to Babylon and, well, die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets sick, right?
Yes.
He gets sick along the way home?
Apparently, no, he's in Babylon when he gets sick and dies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so like there's a ton of theories about that. Like he could have been poisoned,
Right.
but most likely he probably got like an airborne disease.
Yeah.
Like
he didn't
from
have
a mosquito or something.
Exactly. How would you have the immunity for that? And they didn't have any sort of medication.
No.
Yeah, that sounds more likely.
Yeah, that's what I think at least that happened.
So he gets to Babylon and he dies.
He dies, and his final words were "toi kratistoi," or "to the strongest."
Oh no.
Yeah, when asked on his deathbed who should succeed him in June 323 BC.
That's so vague.
Dude, so here's a fun fact. One of his generals was named Craterus.
Okay.
So there's a theory that he literally just said "to Craterus" instead of "to the strongest" because
They're
it's
very
similar.
similar.
Yeah. So
Oh,
that is
no.
a theory. Again, that's like more of like a I guess it technically is actually a theory. Like, but it is just a theory.
There's no way to know.
There's no way to know. But regardless of what was meant at the time, war soon broke out between the successors of Alexander, and they were called the Diadohoi. And they began to fight over portions of the Macedonian Empire before Alexander's body was even cold.
I'm sure, because I'm sure they were licking their chops, to take over, and they all probably think they have claim to being the strongest, right?
Exactly. And I mean, and Alexander's empire is massive, right? Stretching from Greece and Macedonia, all of Asia Minor, like the Levant, Syria, the Middle East, Egypt alone.
Right, Egypt.
All of Persia, like even going into present-day Bactria, which is present-day Afghanistan.
Is that where his wife was from?
Yes. Yeah. Sogdian. But yeah, she was from that general area.
Yeah, that's insane power.
Right. And even in India, like present-day Pakistan, even into India as well.
Right.
Like it's a massive empire.
That's huge.
But it's a really complex process that spans decades, like all this fighting. And so we're kind of going to fast forward a little bit towards the end of the century. So one of his successors is known to history as Seleucus the First Nicator. And Nicator is Greek for winner or victor.
Okay.
So because in terms of landmass, he would be the winner of the Wars of the Diadohoi, as his empire would encompass much of the Middle East, Asia Minor, Persia, and Syria.
Wow.
So it's massive.
Yeah.
And this would be by far the largest of the Alexandrian successor states.
Oh my gosh. Quick question. Do you think when he said, if he did say "to the strongest," do you think he anticipated this to happen? He's like, fight for it. Do you think it was like a command? Like, fight for it?
Oh my God. If he did say that, like, he had to have known. He wasn't an idiot, obviously.
Right. To say "to the strongest," he knows his men.
Like, they're going to fight.
They're going to fight. That's what I think maybe he wanted.
If that's the case, that's like such a dick move. Sorry, excuse my French, guys, but it's true.
That is not chill.
That is so not chill. That is the opposite of chill.
Sorry, I just had that thought, but
No.
tell us more about our victor.
Yeah.
What is his name?
Seleucus the First Nicator.
Okay.
Probably the pronunciation's off, but who cares, right? So now after decades of fighting against his Hellenistic rivals, Seleucus turned his attentions eastward towards Chandragupta, actually, in 306 BC.
Okay.
So, because he was consolidating power in India and had turned westward into the Indus Valley, which is in, I think, present-day Pakistan. And this was an area that had pledged to Alexander, so naturally Seleucus felt that this belonged to him. The sources are almost just non-existent of this conflict that would happen.
Wow,
but
that's weird.
Yeah, but whatever did happen didn't take very long.
Okay.
Because it was just very short. And in fact, like, it's even theorized that there was never actually a war, just like a mobilization of forces before like a peace treaty was signed.
That would be nice.
Yeah, like they almost like stared each other down. They're like, okay, never mind.
This is going to be too crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're both tired. They've both been campaigning and fighting for so long.
We do know that they were lining up for a battle and they didn't end up fighting, and they did sign a peace treaty.
Okay.
Like eventually, right? But they did start peace talks. So I don't think there was ever a major battle between them. Maybe like skirmishes or something. But anyways, 303 BC, a peace treaty was signed between Seleucus and Chandragupta that determined like that the present day area of Pakistan and southern Afghanistan belonged to Chandragupta.
Okay.
And additionally, Seleucus married off one of his daughters, Berenike, to Chandragupta.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a gesture.
It is.
He must have liked him.
But Seleucus received something from Chandragupta.
Oh, so he traded his daughter for something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, Chandragupta got all the land, right?
Yeah.
He got all that land, plus he got, to marry Seleucus's daughter, Berenike. But he gave to Seleucus a gift of 500 elephants.
What?
Yes. So this is like kind of
What?
that singular event that helped spread like Hellenization and
Okay.
like in the years post Alexander, because like he would use these elephants. They basically would become a staple of Hellenistic warfare, and even to an extent like Roman warfare for like a little bit of time, for like almost 200 years.
That's insane.
Yeah. And Indian elephants were the largest war elephants at the time.
I don't like the term war elephants.
I know. I don't either. I mean, it was so bad. And I mean, I told you about that.
Yes.
Weirdos. They used war elephants so much that there was a subspecies of African elephant in North Africa, and they went extinct.
Because they were used for war. That's so sad. I get that, like, they saw them basically as like tanks, right? It was like having a tank.
Yeah, they were biological tanks.
But my goodness, that's not fair. It's one thing. It's cute if the elephant comes to you before a battle and like is consenting to ride into battle with you. That's adorable.
Right.
But otherwise, not so much. Them being forced into battle, not my vibe.
No, not the best. Not the best vibe.
The elephants must have been really valuable to trade essentially that much land.
Oh, they were incredibly valuable.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Seleucus would have seen, he would have been on that Alexandrian campaign into like India. So he would have seen like elephants like firsthand fighting against him and seen how like scary.
Oh, it was that battle that they lost, or that they
fought. They ended up winning, but it was a very hard fought battle.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and he ended up using those elephants against one of the Alexandrian generals like, a few years later, and the elephants would come in clutch basically, and they'd win.
Okay.
But yeah, so by around, now that we're kind of back in India, by around 300 BC, Chandragupta had conquered most of the subcontinent of India at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. And as is tradition, there are only like secondhand accounts of his death and the transition of his rule to his son.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was one story that Chandragupta actually retired and left to be a Jain monk in southern India.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding.
That would be so cool.
So it's a possibility that actually happened. That's where Chandragupta ended his days.
Being a Jain monk would be really chill.
I think so.
Really beautiful.
And even more ironically enough, the rule of his son, Bindusara, is even worse documented.
How?
It's just because it's like not at all. Like there's not a lot of information about him, which is fine because like the episode isn't about him, but I wanted to at least like dive in a little bit into his life to like give some background for Ashoka, but it's very little.
Okay.
So, in fact, we can sum up his reign as further expansion within this Indian subcontinent, further building projects, and kind of like a somewhat laissez-faire attitude towards religion.
Okay. So he's kind of building off of what his father did and also generally setting the foundation for his son.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can kind of see that progression here. And my personal hypothesis at this point is that Chandragupta and Bindusara, that the Mauryan Empire was probably about as religiously tolerant as you could get in the ancient world, but not wholly so.
Right.
Because like Ashoka's tolerance is so greatly admired in his rule that like it must imply that before him, rulers could only be like religiously tolerant up to a certain point.
Okay. So he was an outlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. And plus, we know that Chandragupta and presumably Bindusara were tolerant of the Greek pantheon based on Greek writings at the time.
Oh, really interesting.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of Seleucid like advisors in the Mauryan Empire, like once they make their agreement, their peace talk. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they actually become like lifelong allies.
Wow.
Yeah, for like the duration of each of their empires.
That is so interesting.
Right.
That rarely that I've seen happens.
Yeah, because they kind of got to the point where it's like, okay, you're the edge of mine, I'm at the edge of yours. Like, we don't really want to incur either, like, go more.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and so they're like, okay, like, we can just set our sights of consolidating power within or just marching the other direction.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was kind of, it kind of worked out really well for both of them. But with all that being said, we can finally get to the protagonist of our story. Ashoka. And just as with his grandfather, a lot of Ashoka's early life is shrouded in legend, and most of it comes from Buddhist sources written much later on, so not from the ancient authors. So we have to kind of like take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
Which is annoying. But we do know that he was born circa 304 BC and would have been educated in the Vedic tradition, meaning like a wide range of topics ranging from philosophy to martial arts. And he would almost assuredly been instructed in the ways of the Arthashastra. So it's a treatise that covers many different subjects related to society, but primarily is like a manual of political science, providing instructions like on how to rule effectively. And I mean, the way I interpret it is it seems like it's a way to be like a philosopher king.
What a cool text.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say very appropriate for an Eastern empire.
Yes.
Where those types of, where like philosophy wasn't necessarily as separate from everyday life as it has been in the West historically.
Right, exactly.
So it's just seen as such an important part of your perspective as a leader.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because this was actually pioneered by a prime minister from Chandragupta's time, a man by the name of Chanakya, who was instrumental in the formation of the empire.
Wow.
Yeah. He was the sort of the right-hand man to Chandragupta.
Okay.
So he literally wrote the book on how to rule.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty fancy.
Yeah, he was a polymath. He is actually, we could have probably had an episode just on him if there's enough information about him.
Which there probably isn't. Much to your chagrin.
Yeah. Well, when Ashoka was around the age of 18, he was sent from the capital city to a remote city called Taxila to put down a revolt. And it's here where we get some really interesting tidbits of information, including that Ashoka's father allegedly gave him an army, but no weapons. Again, coming from Buddhist sources.
What?
Yes. And not only that, but he eventually did amass weapons through some sort of vague supernatural means.
Yes.
Pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
And apparently he was merciful to those who put down their weapons, like the enemies that put down their weapons, which seems actually weirdly true based on some ancient inscriptions that have been found in the area.
Wow.
Yeah, which is weird. And to me, this gives us a pretty good, clear picture of who he was. Like, he could be a bloody conqueror, as we will see, especially, but one who also shows mercy in addition to punishment.
This is so fascinating to me to think, because obviously from his grandfather, there's the influence of Jainism, and then you mentioned he's Buddhist. Those, to me, seem so contradictory to leading and squashing revolts and bloody conquest.
Exactly, and I think we'll get to that towards the end, but just as a note, he's not Buddhist yet.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he was not born Buddhist.
Right. That makes sense.
It's really funny you bring that up because it's at this point that Ashoka might have had his first experience with Buddhism.
Ooh.
Yes.
Cocoa Beach is your ultimate Florida beach vacation. Pack your bags and open your mind. Adventure is calling from Orlando's closest beach. Cocoa Beach is Florida's secret gem that's got it all. It's the budget-friendly, retro-cool destination that families and surfers adore. Come soak up the sun and ride the East Coast's most famous waves. Start planning your one-of-a-kind getaway now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
New on CuriosityStream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
So while he was the governor of the commercial center, Ujjain, he fell in love with a woman whose name has been passed down as Devi.
Okay.
So it is heavily implied that she was a Buddhist and that she influenced him greatly from here on out.
Wow.
They were never married, but they did have 2 children together, with their son actually eventually leading a mission to Sri Lanka to, you guessed it, spread Buddhism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this really becomes a big part of the family culture.
Oh, absolutely it does. Buddhism at this point is only just a minor religion.
Mm-hmm.
The major religion in India was Hinduism.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an ancient religion.
Right.
So Buddhism is so old, but it must have been like the new kid on the block.
Exactly.
To people in India.
Yeah, and Buddhism had already been around for centuries at this point.
Yeah.
But still a minor religion. And it's unclear exactly how Buddhism and other heterodoxy religions like Jainism competed with Hinduism, which was seen as the orthodox religion.
Right.
Interesting. I don't really know. But
I would think, I don't know either. I would think they wouldn't compete in every sense. They wouldn't try to compete.
Right.
Or want to compete necessarily, but would still, people still practice obviously both of those religions today. So
it's true.
They still prevailed in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. So regardless, though, Ashoka's father dies in the 270s BC at some point. We don't even have the exact year because the sources differ. And Ashoka becomes the next ruler despite being the second-born son. So according to historians, there was a brief civil war where Ashoka ended up killing 2 of his brothers in order to acquire the throne.
Damn, that's cold.
That's cold. But what's written down is that he actually killed 99 brothers.
Okay.
Which no one really believes.
I believe it.
You believe it?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm Mexican. I believe it. 99 brothers.
I got 99 problems, but a brother ain't one.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hate myself. Okay. So this brings up an interesting point. Buddhist writings about Ashoka paint a picture that before he converted, he was just a cruel despot that only after he accepted the Buddha's teachings did he become an enlightened ruler.
Okay. That could be a biased source.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, that's kind of what I put is like, it's just too neat for lack of better words. It's easy to say that like a certain event changed everything, and for the narrative that would just be like a really easy and simple transition. But we know life isn't easy like that.
Yeah, humans are very complicated creatures.
Exactly. But we do know that he had a propensity to govern well, like through his upbringing, and it seems that he also had a penchant for mercy, which again kind of goes against that. Regardless, by about 260 BC, the Mauryan Empire had surrounded the coastal kingdom of Kalinga, which was situated on the Bay of Bengal. And the kingdom had become rich through trade, and for reasons lost to us, Ashoka set his eyes on the prize.
What was the prize?
The kingdom of...
Oh.
Yeah, of Kalinga.
I was like, was there a treasure there?
Yeah, he's like,
The
kingdom's
kingdom.
my treasure.
Oh, he wants...
He wants it all, baby.
He wants it all. We were very different people then.
Exactly.
Was the prize a nap or something at the end of this?
So it's at this conquest that truly became like a turning point in Ashoka's life. So it's thought that the invasion directly cost the lives of at least 100,000 people.
Wow, that would be insane.
Not to mention that like 150,000 more were deported.
Wow. Oh my God.
And thousands more would die from disease and famine.
That's insane.
Ashoka walked across the battlefield looking upon death and destruction and experienced what can only be described as like a profound change of heart, which he later recorded and which he did write down.
Really?
Yeah. So this is a translation. It's a, there's only like a handful of people that can actually like translate it. So this is just one of them. But, quote, on conquering Kalinga, the beloved of the gods, Ashoka, felt remorse for when an independent country is conquered, the slaughter, death, and deportation of the people is extremely grievous to the beloved of the gods and weighs heavily on his mind. Even those who are fortunate to have escaped, whose love is undiminished, suffer from the misfortune of their friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and relatives. Today, if 100th or 1,000th part of those people who were killed or died or were deported when Kalinga was annexed were to suffer similarly, it would weigh heavily on the mind of the beloved of the gods. End quote.
Wow. So he's really struggling with what he did.
Yeah, he struggles big time. And it's here that a monarch did something possibly for the first time in history, especially like a major monarch. He publicly admitted that he regretted his invasion and he renounced war altogether.
Wow.
He either completed his embrace of Buddhism at this point or he started to take Buddhism more seriously. It's really unclear at this specific time like which one it is.
That makes sense that it's unclear too, because that would be such a personal internal dialogue.
Exactly.
But could you imagine, I can't imagine in our lifetime hearing a leader, a world leader say something like that.
Absolutely not. And this is the ancient world where like might is everything.
Yeah, you need power, you need strength, you need ruthlessness.
Exactly. And he did take Buddhism very seriously because he sent emissaries as far away as Syria and Greece to preach about the Buddha.
Wow.
I know. Imagine being in ancient Greece and hearing about some dude walking down the street and he's like talking about the Buddha.
That would be so crazy to travel back in time and just like overhear that conversation.
I know. Wouldn't that just be incredible? Like,
wow.
I mean, first of all, because like you'd probably need like some sort of apparatus to understand, the ancient Greek language.
I have my TARDIS.
You have your TARDIS, okay.
Yeah.
So there you go. You have the TARDIS. But then, like, all of a sudden, you're just like...
Wait, what?
Wait. My mind would, I think, short circuit.
Are they talking about Buddhism? I thought it was in ancient Greece.
Yeah, what's going on? I would literally think there was something wrong with the time machine.
Yeah. That's fascinating, though, to see the spread of information like that. That's so cool. In the ancient world where it's so hard to travel and to move and to learn about how other people live. Fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating. So he would go on to carve edicts into large stones and pillars throughout the country at pilgrimages like site, as long as along trade like routes, especially the busy ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they were not carved in Sanskrit, but in localized regional dialects,
That's smart,
so the people could understand it.
right?
And these still exist to this day, and you can even see one in present day like Afghanistan that was written in Aramaic and Greek.
That's so crazy.
In Afghanistan.
That would be so cool to see.
I know. And that goes back to the days of Alexander. And
Yeah.
actually, Greek would last in Afghanistan, like Bactria as it was known back then, for centuries.
Wow.
I know. It's kind of a fascinating like subchapter of Greek history.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see for both of these rulers, you know, Alexander and Ashoka, the ripples of their influence.
Right?
Yeah.
Pretty wild. And it's kind of just wild because not only did he do that, he would, first of all, these were spread all over India and Pakistan as well, right? But he would actually go and visit like all regions of his empire.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, in fact, for 1 year, he traveled 250 days straight.
Oh my
like
gosh.
every single day traveling.
So he really cared.
Yeah, he absolutely cared. You couldn't take that away from him.
Right.
So one of the virtues that Ashoka had adopted was that of extreme religious tolerance. So a lot of comparisons have been drawn between he and that of Cyrus the Great of Persia.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned that before.
Yes, he would declare in one of the edicts, quote, "All men are my children. As for my own children, I desire that they may be provided with all the welfare and happiness of this world and of the next, or so do I desire of all men as well," end quote.
So he's just like, I want what's best for everybody.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, and he really, truly didn't care like about religion at all. I mean, he did care about Buddhism, right? And
Right.
that was his thing, but he never pushed that down on anyone.
If anything, I feel like that speaks to the level at which he believed in the teachings of Buddhism
Right?
versus just kind of a lot of times we've seen, and we've even covered this in previous episodes, where people will adopt a religion as a power move
Right.
or some sort of way to gain influence over people. But he must have really believed what he was preaching.
I think he really did. I mean, it's kind of crazy too, because like further edicts would include that he would resolve to use persuasion and not violence to win others to his side. I'll get to that in a second, but he noted that all roads would have trees for shade and that medical care was available to all people as well as all animals.
Oh my gosh, the
Yeah.
United States could never.
Yeah.
Present day US.
He urged people to follow like a vegetarian diet and
Yeah.
even had a protected species list of animals people were not allowed to hunt.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's awesome.
it's incredible. Yeah. Like we know that he also banned the burning of forests and the dumping of waste that could cause like harm to animals.
We really need a ruler like that today, huh?
I know. I mean, in general, he would promote like a universal generosity and piety to all people and I guess even animals, right?
Yes. That's a big thing with Buddhism, is all life is sacred. There's sort of no one's above anyone else,
Right.
which is so cool to see that he's practicing that.
Oh, he definitely does. But also, you know, he wasn't above using violence.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean,
He's a complex man.
we do have scarce records of his forces fighting even after his supposed conversion to Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he never disbanded the army, right? And even it makes sense given his upbringing because of the philosophy that he inherited. Like being a just ruler is, you know, being strong when needed. And he was not a weak emperor by any means.
Right. At the end of the day, he's also just a person. So he can love and believe in Buddhism and still also think that the right thing to do is to, you know,
Right.
protect his empire.
Exactly. And his citizens, which I think
Mm-hmm.
he does, quite, not ruthlessly, but he does quite effectively. Like he will keep like
He's
a stern
really good.
hand. Yes, exactly. But again, like these like the wars or conflicts were never necessarily like offensive. It was more like putting down revolts or rebellions or defensive measures.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, these were put down violently. So he wasn't above using violence, but at the same time, it's not like he's going to go seek it out either.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a person, right? So,
Right.
So many people all over the world today practice different religious beliefs, but don't practice them to a T.
Exactly.
My dad, for example, calls himself a cafeteria Catholic. You pick and
That's
choose.
amazing.
You pick and choose what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think this diminishes from his like ability as a ruler. In fact, I think it really like enhances it, right?
Right.
Because he does what's necessary, even though his beliefs kind of go against it.
Yeah, it shows that it's truly his priority.
Right.
More so than like himself maybe, or his own desires, beliefs. Maybe he would also love to be in a monastery somewhere as a monk, but he definitely sees ruling as like his vocation.
Exactly. That's how I think about it too. So, I mean, without though, like, I mean, he does have this warfare, right? Like little bits of warfare. He does have his army, but he doesn't have a central focus on warfare anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so this allowed Ashoka to really engage in more like public works programs that included just massive building works, including shrines called stupas, to irrigation canals, to hospitals.
Wow.
Yeah, so like all over the place, right? And many of these stupas, just like the pillars containing the edicts, still exist today, and you can find them all throughout the subcontinent.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I really want to see them.
They're kind of like these mounds, like in the earth, and like, you know, like the structure's still there from his time, right? Like 3rd century BC, but like subsequent like generations have built like more like on top of it.
Of course, right? That's what always happens, but I think that's actually what's so beautiful to see.
Yeah, isn't it?
The layers of human history.
I mean, I remember looking at like a diagram once of like a Mexican pyramid that was like the latest edition was from like the 16th or like 15th. No, maybe no, it was probably like the 15th century.
Yeah, that
maybe
sounds
15th
right.
or 14th century, right? But the earliest, like most like subterranean portion of it, like dated back to like 500 BC.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. But anyways, yeah, it's kind of like same sort of thing going on here.
Right.
So, remember the beginning of this episode when I spoke about Alexander?
Yeah.
Well, like the Hellenization of large swaths of Asia was actually, you know, quite important to Ashoka's rule and his legacy, because it's under like him that he starts these large scale building projects using stone. And this was mainly due to that Greek influence, because before they built in non-permanent materials such as like wood, bamboo, and thatch.
No, the Greeks loved good stone.
They definitely did, and they did it well.
Yeah.
So, and it was mainly due to this Greek influence as well as Ashoka's commitment to make his country better that led to these now like semi-permanent, you know, institutions.
Very cool.
Yeah. And it was used all over the empire, and buildings just became sturdier, and the archaeological record is greatly expanded during this time, like obviously. So according to Sri Lankan tradition, Ashoka would eventually die during his 37th year of his reign, which would likely suggest like the 230s BC.
Okay.
So roughly about like 100 years after Alexander's death, actually. And according to these same traditions, his body was burned on a pyre, and it took 7 days and nights for the flame to finally subside.
Ooh.
Yes, exactly. Going back kind of to like the legendary
Yeah. Right.
background. I love it.
7 is always the number, isn't it?
7, yeah.
3, 7, 40. Those numbers come up in so many different cultures.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Very interesting. But his legacy is incredibly profound even today, and most people probably don't understand like the full context of it. So, I mean, he played a central and very large role in the expansion of Buddhism, right? And it is now like a world religion.
It's one of the major world religions for sure. Yeah.
And he played a very big part in that.
That's so nuts. That's what I mean. The ripples of these people.
It's amazing. And the very symbols that would define his career are actually now present within the present day, like, Indian government.
Really?
So yeah, that the wheel of righteousness that comes from him actually is smack dab in the middle of the Indian flag.
Oh my gosh.
That comes from Ashoka.
That's nuts.
And Ashoka's pillar capital of Sarnath
Yeah.
is the national emblem of India.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. I mean, and you know, as what happens eventually with all empires, the Mauryan dynasty would eventually end. I can't speak English, apparently.
That's okay.
But, you know, his everlasting effects would live on. And
Yeah.
obviously we see them to this day.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the somewhat legendary life of Ashoka.
That's awesome, babe. This was so informative. I learned so much. Like, honestly, I hadn't heard of, aside from this dynasty, I hadn't heard of any of this.
Yeah. I mean, what's really interesting is a lot of people don't understand. Like, you think of like ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and like India actually played like a really big part in like Hellenization and the Roman world.
Right.
Like, I mean, we've seen ancient or like Macedonian coins from like the 3rd century BC in India, all the way to coins from like Rome, like Byzantine Roman Emperor Justinian, and even I think further. Like that's almost like 1,000 years.
Yeah, and we can see from the story that you shared that India in itself had so much rich history going on.
It did.
At this time, we just don't know as much about it.
I know. But the buildings are like really cool, and these pillars are like awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll post some pictures on our Instagram.
Oh, good. I can't wait to see.
Exactly. And so last but certainly not least, my sources. So we got Encyclopedia Britannica. We got worldhistory.org.
Nice.
National Geographic. ThoughtCo. I even used Justin's Epitome Historiarum Trogi Pompeii. Or Pompeii.
That sounds like quite a mouthful.
It is. And you know what's funny is like an epitome, historium or historiarium is literally saying like an abridgment of like this other dude's work.
That's crazy.
So like what I'm reading is actually like him just basically paraphrasing and making an abridged copy of someone else's work who we've lost completely.
He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll just give you the Spark Notes.
Yeah, it's basically the Spark Notes. Oh, but yeah, that's a fun fact.
There we go. Now we know.
Yes.
Thank you again so much for sharing this story. I feel like I want to like look at your notes because there was just so much great information.
Well, you can.
Well, yeah, I can. I have access to your Google Drive.
You do, yeah.
But thank you so much, babe. And thank you, weirdos, for listening, for being here on this journey with us. Do not forget to participate in our 100th episode by emailing us. The information about that will be in the show notes, of course.
Exactly. We really want to hear from you guys. We want to hear your questions and your stories.
Yes, that's going to be so fun to read people's weird history stories.
I'm
to
so
read
excited.
Their emails.
I've seen emails come in, and
yeah.
I purposely haven't read them
Me
yet.
too. Yeah, I'm waiting.
So yeah, you guys, we haven't read them yet, but we see them, and we're going to read them.
On the show.
And I'm not going to say it, but there's a little surprise of our 100th episode.
Yes, we have a little extra special surprise we haven't shared yet. So stay tuned for that coming up in a couple weeks.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I guess without further ado.
Until next time, weirdos.
Adios. Arthasharta or Artha. Oh, shoot, I don't know how to pronounce this. The Arthashastra.
Okay.
Definitely gonna cut that out of the episode.
No, leave it. It's okay to make mistakes.
Okay, yeah, right here, the Arthashastra.
Yeah.
Cocoa Beach is your ultimate Florida beach vacation. Pack your bags and open your mind. Adventure is calling from Orlando's closest beach. Cocoa Beach is Florida's secret gem that's got it all. It's the budget-friendly, retro-cool destination that families and surfers adore. Come soak up the sun and ride the East Coast's most famous waves. Start planning your one-of-a-kind getaway now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Attention car shoppers. Right now at South Carolina Federal Credit Union, you can get a new or used auto loan and pay nothing until 2024. And no payments for 90 days means nothing out of pocket going into the new year. Plus, we have flexible rates and terms, so you could make the best financial choice for you. Learn more at scfederal.org/auto loans. That's scfederal.org/auto loans. Certain restrictions apply. Existing South Carolina federal credit loans are excluded.